Are you ready? Listen to me at once. Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting to order for the Projects and Services Committee of the whole committee members. Today's date is October 23rd and it is 4 p.m. Could we rise and salute the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, could we have a roll call, please?
Vice Chair Brown.
Here.
Director Branning.
Here.
Director Josie. Here. And Chair Hubbard.
Present.
We've got a quorum.
All right, our next agenda item is meeting open to the public. This is where members of the audience may address the committee on any matters within the general subject manner of LAVTA. I see no speaker cards.
So
Do we have anybody online?
we do have one person online. If you'd like to speak, can you please raise your hand? They're not raising their hand. I didn't receive anything via email either. And is there anybody in the public? No, we're good.
Is this on meeting open to the public, but did you receive anything on any of the other agenda items? Let's do it all at the same time.
No.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. I'm going to close the meeting open to the public and look for approval or questions regarding the minutes of September 25th. Any questions?
Progress.
Okay.
All right, so hopefully he'll be back
You should
on.
be back.
Any questions on the minutes? If not, entertain a motion.
Wasn't here. I can't second, but I wasn't here.
Sure, you can. Second.
I can. Okay, I'll second.
Do you have any corrections on the minutes?
Not that I noticed.
If a motion made and seconded, let's take a roll call vote, please.
Okay. So Dr. Branning.
Aye.
Director Josie. Chair Hubbard is absent at the moment. Vice Chair Brown.
Here, yes.
Motion passes.
All right, let's talk to agenda item 5, Wheels in Motion, the outreach results.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, committee members. Mike, you want to sit at the table? Or to the, okay. All right.
He has more authorities. to do that.
So Mike is going to walk you through the results of your Wheels in Motion outreach campaign, and you have a slide deck.
We
Go
have,
slide deck. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Mike Tobin, Director of
can we
Public.
wait for a second?
Okay.
There is a hand raised in the audience now. So I don't know if that was for meeting open to public. Oh, never mind.
No.
I think it is. It's David. Go, keep going. You promoted.
We had a vote, yeah.
I am.
The last agenda item.
It's dark. Yeah, it's a little lighter.
Thank you.
There we go.
Okay,
Sorry, everyone, I'm back.
all right, wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, we're just doing a presentation on agenda item 5.
Mhm.
So good afternoon, everyone. So today, along with Cyrus Sheik, our senior transit planner, we will be presenting on the much anticipated results of our Wheels in Motion survey. So I'll try to keep the presentation abbreviated because I know there's going to be a lot of Q&A. But without further ado, let's dive right in. So the agenda for the presentation today, next slide. There we go. So we'll discuss very briefly the methodology of the survey instrument. Then we'll delve into the actual findings of the survey. So we'll first discuss sample or characteristics of the sample respondents, look at some of our rider characteristics. Then we'll actually look at each scenario individually and look at how each of the respondents voted on each scenario. Then we will finally go over the preferred alternative or the scenario that ended up, for lack of a better term, winning. We're scoring the highest, and then finally look at some supplemental findings, and then conclude with questions and discussion. Next slide. So the methodology, so maybe just take a step back and refresh everyone's memory. So Wheels in Motion is the name for the public outreach campaign that LAVTA has been conducting over the past couple of months. It's really an effort to engage with our riders, with our community, and to solicit their input and feedback on 3 different service level scenarios. This was originally a response or a reaction to BART's service change, which they implemented last month, but it kind of transformed into an opportunity for us to take a look at our service and reevaluate and reimagine it in this post-pandemic world. So just some background there, and now the methodology. So this survey opened on September 7th and ran through October 8th, so a little over a month there for people to submit their responses. The surveys were provided in both English and Spanish. It was distributed online and in paper, so we had a website dedicated to Wheels in Motion and had a link that took you to the online survey. But of course, staff were out attending multiple events throughout the service area, Livermore, Pleasanton, City of Dublin, where we answered a lot of questions that riders and community members had about the different scenarios. We also distributed paper surveys at these events as well. And of course, you got to incentivize these people, or some of them. So we did have a raffle to pick folks to win a $50 Clipper card. So we did end up getting a pretty good response rate. So 228 responses overall, which is very, very good. So a lot of feedback was collected. And that's what we'll be going over today. Next slide. So a little about the characteristics of the sample. So on the left-hand side, you see a pie chart that shows the proportion of cities of residence of respondents. So as you can see, 38% of respondents resided in the city of Livermore, followed by other, which was 27%, I believe. So that's folks who do not reside in our service area in the Tri-Valley. This is followed by City of Dublin with 22%, and then City of Pleasanton with 13%. On the right-hand side, or actually rather in the middle, you see 2 tables. You see a breakdown of respondents by age. You can see that actually a majority of respondents were under the age of 50, which is probably pretty representative of our ridership. Income, however, I do want to note that 31% or almost a third of respondents preferred not to state their income. So I'm not sure really how much insight we got from this characteristic or demographic here. And then covered up on the right-hand side is a pie chart showing the breakdown of household size, which also seems pretty accurate and is representative of our ridership. I can't read the numbers there, I'm sorry, but
11% have more than 5 people in their house. That seems
Which is
very
pretty surprising.
unusual.
okay. But most, it's 1 person in their household or 2 folks.
5 over.
Next slide. So now characteristics for our riders. So on the right-hand side, you'll see a breakdown of respondents and how often they ride wheel service. So you can see the large red bar, that 62% of respondents ride our service frequently, which we define as at least once a month, if not more. And then you can see a breakdown, which is sometimes, what is that?
So once in 1 to 2 months.
Thank you, and then never, which is 6%, which is very small. So I think the takeaway here is we did reach a lot of our frequent riders, so 62%. And then if you even count the sometimes, so majority of the respondents ride our system at least, once every couple of months, if not more. So we did reach a lot of our frequent riders. If you look at the left-hand side, we did want to ask a series of questions to really see, post-pandemic, how important is it that folks are able to connect with BART, connect with ACE, or are they primarily using our bus service to connect with other lines within our existing service area? So you can see 84% of all respondents use Wheels to connect to BART. So connecting and transferring to BART is still a very important aspect of our service. 38% use Wheels to connect locally with other Wheels buses, and then just 14% use it to connect to ACE Rail. I also asked our market research firm who helped conduct the survey to break down that 62% of respondents to see how this would change based on if you were a frequent rider. And so for frequent riders at 62%, 80% said that they use Wheels to connect to BART. 16.5% said that they use it to connect to ACE. Then actually 45% say they use it to connect to other Wheels buses, so a little higher. Then 17.5% said other, which I'm not sure what that means. But
Can we take just a little break? Any questions?
any questions? I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers out there.
I'm a little surprised so many want to connect to BART, and your majority was a Livermore response. which doesn't have a bar. They could connect,
Oh, it
just
must
a
have
little bit of a,
many routes to connect.
it's just a few seats on the ride.
It is a little out of sync though, if you look at our Clipper data, which I was just speaking about in another meeting earlier today. Clipper data is, it only represents folks who use Clipper, but it does represent a more holistic sample. We see about, I think about 10% of our ridership transferring to or from BART using Clipper data. This may just be the folks who decided to take the survey, more commuters. We also had a large number of folks on the 20X, which I know Mike and Cyrus will be speaking about here in the future. So this is not a statistically significant survey.
Just interesting.
It doesn't mean that 80% of our riders are connected to
Correct.
BART. It means that 186 people are connecting to BART
It's
and they're motivated. I mean, that's,
right, and it's 84% of the 62%.
it's 84% of the 222, right? It's 86%.
So 84% is the entire
Okay,
sample,
right,
and
right,
then
right.
80% is just that 62%.
Yeah.
So 80% of the 62%. If that makes sense, right?
So 180.
Yes,
Right.
you're right.
Which doesn't surprise me. Over the course of a month, 186 people took our bus to BART and had time to take the survey.
Well, there's the people that are going to BART, 84%, plus the people that are going to ACE, so that's 98% right there. So the 38% are switching in order to get to BART, or switching in order to get to ACE.
And they may have
That
answered
does
more.
not add up to 100.
It doesn't have to. They could have answered more than
Today
one.
they went to BART, tomorrow they're going to ACE.
That's true,
Yeah.
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 And then they're taking a couple bus routes to get there.
Well, or they ride the bus all the time and they ride for multiple reasons. On the days they work from home, they go shopping.
It says wheels to connect to other wheels buses, so that's an interconnect 2-seat ride sort of thing. Well, it's just-
Like transferring out of transit center, transferring out to
But
Dublin.
people aren't using it to go to work, and they're not using, which is, I just think it's kind of interesting, they're not using it to go shopping, they're using it to go to ACE or BART, by far the majority.
Well, what was the percentage of other?
So I only have that for frequent riders, and it was 17.5%, so I assume it'll be somewhere.
We weren't asking their trip purpose. We were just asking how, if you're connecting to BART, they could be going to work on BART. They could be going.
Well, I
to
mean, they
medical.
work within the Tri-Valley, they're not working at the grocery store, they're not, you know what I'm saying? Well, they're going to BART
Well, those people are, but
or ACE.
they might be going to BART on their weekends. I mean, we didn't ask them when they were going to BART.
Yeah, when you say ever, you know, did you
Yeah,
ever take a wheels bus and connect to BART? Yeah, okay, that's why these questions are so challenging. Okay,
It was difficult coming up with the questions for the survey, because you run the risk of just asking too many questions and overloading the respondent, so we wanted to keep them very clear and concise. And that is sort of a downside, is you don't get that sort of granular data you want.
Does our Clipper data match up with the 38% wheel-to-wheel transfers, or do you know?
I don't know offhand, we can check. We also have our fixed route customer satisfaction survey. The results we presented to this committee very recently. There could be some data in there about, transfer activity. And MTC is doing their, I think their triennial OD, origin destination survey. They should be kicking it off this month. And so that will be a statistically significant survey to better understand how people move around the region, how they get to our bus, where they go from our bus, whether that requires another transit trip.
interesting. Okay, thanks for the break.
Of course, I needed that break.
Give me a bottle of water, we have extra.
Next slide, I believe I'm gonna pass it over to Cyrus now to go over the scenarios and the scoring.
I had a bit of a comment, not so much a question, but it just seems really apparent that people that are using the bus really rely upon it. If they're going to BART, they're going to work. If they're going to ACE, they're going to work. If they're going on another wheels bus, okay, they just are really, really reliant on our services for their daily needs to get to work. It seems pretty clear.
True.
Thank you, good afternoon. So in the survey, as Mike indicated, respondents were presented with the 3 service scenarios, each of which comes with its own trade-offs. primarily between the geographic footprint of the service on one hand and the core service frequencies on the other. And as you're likely aware, well, we talked about that BART just changed their train service frequency about a month ago on the Dublin Pleasanton line from 15 minutes to 20 minutes. And that, as we discussed, has implications for how well the wheel service connects to and from BART trains and at what degree that those connections, time connections take place. So the first scenario that you see on the screen presented in the survey, and I believe that you're somewhat familiar with these scenarios, at least big picture, was the null alternative, the status quo. In a nutshell, that means continued 15-minute frequencies on two of the routes, the main routes, and varying frequencies on the other routes, either 30 minutes or 60 minutes on those routes in most cases. Also, some pre-pandemic service would not be restored because that's where we're at right now. That's the status.
Cyrus, can I interrupt for a second? David has his hand raised.
You ended up earlier. But I didn't call her. There we go.
So as you can see in the upper corner, right-hand corner of this slide, only about 1 in 5 of the respondents stated that they liked this scenario. And close to half said that they dislike this option. Next slide.
But before you go, Kristen, in this meeting, projects and services, we have talked about, correct me if I'm wrong, that the 20X has no riders and the 70X has almost no riders. And that'll be important because you bring those routes up again. But help me out, Cyrus. Do we have riders on the 20X in order to justify a route down 580? Because the bus has to go all the way over to the HOV lane and then come all the way back. I remember it being somewhat of a dangerous route and that people are not on the route. I mean, don't we have to not only quiz them about what choice do you want, but who's on the buses? Are people on the 70X and the 20X, or 70 and the 20X?
So on the 70, I don't have a good profile at the current ridership, but on the 20, we have a very, very dedicated group that goes primarily to the lab, to our Citadel lab. And they are very enthusiastic about the service. And they've been keeping in touch with us throughout this process. And they are monitoring their connections at the BART station. We have about 30 boardings, 30 to 35 on the 20 per day. And we basically just do 2 outbound trips in the morning and 2 inbound trips in the afternoon.
And you can time it fairly closely so they get to work on time then? So we're not running them at 10 in the morning, you're running them at 7 or 8 or 8 o'clock or something?
So the current schedule is actually based on input we receive directly from HR at the lab.
Okay,
So we kind of tailored it to their travel needs.
so they want to go from the BART station and I guess that's the Hacienda BART station. And then they just come straight down and then they take the south route down.
It's a lab school trip.
So that's your current. Yeah. Yeah.
They've all been to school a long, long time. Okay, all right, and you don't know the 70, but we will get it later.
The rider profile, not right now. I haven't looked at
Yeah,
I mean, I see the 70 occasionally on my commute, and it's a handful of people on it. I've seen bikes.
I mean, you're going all the way to Walnut Creek, so
Yeah.
it's hard to say 5 people to go all the way to Walnut Creek. Okay.
Most of them on the 70, similar to the pandemic, they do commute southbound. They're coming into this area for employment rather than going the opposite direction.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, next slide. So the findings from scenario 1, continuing that one aspect in particular was a concern that it would not align with the new BART train frequency. And there was also some apprehension about making permanent the pandemic suspension of some routes and frequencies in this scenario. Next slide. So the second scenario presented in the survey would place a heavy emphasis on frequency of two of the front routes. The 10 and the 30 rapid transit routes, offering peak frequencies of every 10 minutes on those routes, and maintain a midday frequency on them of 15 minutes, like we require currently. However, we would do so by further reducing service coverage and reducing frequencies on any secondary routes that will still be there in this scenario. So here, looking again at the upper right corner, an even larger share of respondents disapproved of this scenario than scenario one. Less than 20% of those surveyed liked this option, while almost 60% disapproved of it. Next slide. And those surveyed did indicate that they liked the alignment with the new BART schedule that the 10-minute peak frequency on the two front routes would bring in this option. And although most respondents also liked the increase in frequency on those routes, they didn't appear to be willing to make the trade-off of further eliminating local and express routes to accomplish this. Any questions about scenario two? Next slide. So the third scenario presented in the outreach would align all wheels schedules with the lower BART frequency denominator of 20 minutes instead of 15 minutes, where the trunk lines would continue to meet every BART train at their new frequency, and the local routes generally will meet every other train during peak, every 40 minutes instead of 30 minutes. In return, this option would expand the footprint of the system by restoring coverage in several parts of the area that are currently unserved. And looking again at the upper right corner, this scenario was well received in the survey. More than 2/3 of respondents stated that they liked this option, while only about 1 in 6 stated that they disliked it. Next slide. A large majority liked the alignment with the new BART schedule across the board in this option, and they also liked the addition of new local service. Many of the respondents expressed some ambivalence about the reduction in local frequencies with the BART schedule alignment. But in the end, it appears that is the trade-off that they would be willing to make. Any questions about that one?
Any questions?
Comments, that's the attention today is comments also.
So I have one comment. Can we go back to the actual map for scenario three? Looking at Route 4, let's be clear that we're not actually talking about West Dublin there. We're talking about Central Dublin. West Dublin is really considered to be west of 680 and San Ramon Road, and we still show no coverage in actual West Dublin.
And there was a time when that was Dublin.
Yeah.
So central.
Okay, comments?
Not particularly, I mean, you picked the most satisfying colors for a scenario. Might be an unfair thing to.
Supervisor? Yeah.
Yeah, so I note that several routes seem to go along the 580 freeway. I have to imagine that some of that is because there's no arterial that goes through, i.e. Dublin Boulevard connecting at some point with North Canyons Parkway. Does that mean that our buses are actually getting on the freeway? If so, they're not picking anybody up. And if they could go on an arterial road, would they be able to then increase service along the route there?
So actually, in this scenario, that's a little bit what we would be doing with the 580X. We would have more of a local catchment area in Livermore before it hops on the freeway. The other routes, like the 20X, we would probably not, I think, touch given the specific unique market for that route. But I think in general, it does help express routes if they have a local catchment area before they express to somewhere. Also note that some of this service is intended to provide Livermore with both a local option through the community going to BART and a little bit quicker express option going to BART during commute hours.
If they're in commute hours, then they're going to be stuck in traffic. I don't know. Do we at LAVTA have a position on whether or not the road should be extended because of our bus routes?
You're referencing the Dublin Boulevard extension?
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you
I
for
just
bringing
am trying to figure out how, if it adversely or positively affects us, or we're ambivalent. I just don't know.
My personal opinion is it would positively impact us to have that roadway connect. It would give us an opportunity to provide more ridership depending on the development that would occur. And it would also take the bus off the freeway where we do not have any bus stops.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Sure, good questions. I have a question and Supervisor Hubbard can help me answer. You've been here a while. When we hired Nelson Nygaard, I remember frequency increases ridership. If you're gonna stand out there, you just missed a bus that comes along every hour, you're gonna go, why am I here? You're not gonna wait for 50 minutes for the next bus. And that when we were looking at that rapid, I never timing it to BART, but if you get too infrequent, people they just give up. They need something that they can go wait. Like I go to wait for BART. I don't even look at the schedule. I just know it's gonna be there. So I'm gonna go and then gonna catch the next one. But some of these routes, like every 40 minutes, maybe you're going to work, but other than that, just to go shopping or whatever, it's pretty infrequent, and 60 minutes. So my question is, have you considered running this past a transit agency like Nelson Nygaard before we make a change? This is their business. This is what they've tweaked our schedule before. And it's wonderful serving customers, which is wonderful. But I just want to keep mindful that are we doing something that could also hurt us?
If I can answer that, first of all, I love that question because 10 years ago, 8 years ago, when we did our COA, frequency was the #1 most important driver of ridership.
Yeah.
And BART ridership was our only market. Students, Las Positas College, and people who could not find parking at BART were our market. And so that we went all in on frequency. And so here we are in a post-pandemic reality where I think we wanted to test if frequency is still the most important thing. And I believe what we've learned through our surveying is folks are willing to tolerate a little less frequency to expand, to use Cyrus's words, the footprint of where our buses go. There's a risk with that. We could have empty buses. And so we will need to have a very strong monitoring program, assuming the board takes action and we implement, we'll need to watch our routes carefully. I have been speaking with Thomas Whitman from Nelson Nygaard. He's doing our long range plan.
Okay.
He's pleased with where we're ending up with this scenario. I think he thinks it's the right thing to do given the change in travel patterns. He has not dug into Cyrus's work in detail, but he is pleased with the footprint that scenario 3 provides, and as he's also thinking about our 10-year service plan.
Okay, because even Route 2 up in Dublin, and that was one of the routes that we wanted to support with the Lyft Uber contract.
Yep.
And every hour, I just wonder how many people are going to stand out there and wait for the bus. And then it's a loop, you see that loop that is a dead end loop that you have to U-turn and come back, which is a hard pickup. Okay.
We also may learn down the road that like a micro transit service might be more appropriate in some communities that are hard, because you're right, a one-way loop every hour will help some people get around, but it is not a very convenient level of service. So I think, I'm excited that the community wants to see more coverage. And I think we will be monitoring performance very, very closely, post-implementation. And we will not hesitate to come back to you with recommendations for adjustments as needed.
Okay, and the last one on Route 11, does it go all the way east, then turns and then dead ends?
It stops at the Vasco Road Ace Station. So it serves the very industrial area of Livermore.
Right.
And I know that there are plans, Evan, maybe you can opine on this, but there's some development that will be occurring to the east of Greenville.
Potentially, it takes a, citizen initiative,
Okay,
so we'll see. I wouldn't plan our bus routes around it.
Okay.
Years and years.
years and years, okay, all right, fair enough.
Okay, so it's an end and then we turn around and you turn it all the way back that route?
Yeah, and that one I believe starts at the transit center.
Yes, and then the other terminus is actually the Vasco Ace.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, too bad there's no loop once you get all the way out there,
There is a loop within the Vasco East Station.
but you have to go all the way back to the east and then come back around?
We don't have to, but that's how the route is set up. I mean, we can look at that,
Okay.
but that's currently how the route is set up pre-pandemic as well.
I know I'm sitting here with transit experts, but I just want to make sure that we have buses that have people in them going to routes, and that we're also looking forward to, okay, here's our ridership now, and everybody's happy and your numbers are good for happiness. But next year and the year after, longer range, the plans, keep that in mind, who we have now, but who are we gonna try to pick up to increase our ridership? I mean, ever since I got here, we're living and dying over ridership, and money. And money for Jennifer, but yeah, okay, all right, those are my comments, thank you.
And to note, I don't think that system-wide productivity is going to go down as a result of if we were to use iron fleet. And the reason for that is the kind of frequency change that we would make on the 10:30 from 15 minutes to 20 minutes is not a make or break frequency change. It's not like we're going from a walk-up frequency to a frequency where people have to read the schedule all the time or vice versa. So if that holds, then we should see productivity actually on per unit basis go up on those routes, even as we would implement new neighborhood routes. That's not going to have the same level of movements per hour.
Then we have to figure out who we're targeting to go get those additional riders.
Yes.
And that to me is really important. So we're happy with who we have now, but we're certainly not the ridership numbers that returned pre-COVID. And how can we gain those new riders? Is it marketing and outreach? Because lack of frequency, I'm just concerned. Okay.
So question, if we land on this scenario and we implement it and we have reestablished these routes and we've taken the rapids down to 20 minutes and then BART re-ups the frequency. What is our plan? Because if we have now reestablished these routes, we don't have enough buses and drivers to bring the rapids back to every 15 minutes or more frequent if BART should increase their frequency.
That's a great question, and I don't have a great answer for it. I just was in meetings with BART today, and if there is no additional money identified in the next 3 years, it will be a dire situation for BART. And they are actually seeing more ridership post-service change, which I think is wonderful, and I'm hopeful that we will see the same result. I just also, Cyrus should mention, or I'll mention for Cyrus, in scenario 2 and 3, we improve our weekend service. This is just a snapshot of the weekday, but our weekend service on the 10 and the 30 it's significantly lower than on the weekday. And so I think we are testing it, if we improve service for our off-peak rider, will they take more trips? And I think that's what BART is seeing. That's what we saw at Samtrans, and I'm hopeful we will see that here.
Okay, and this is only talking about the peak hour frequency.
Correct.
What are we doing to our non-peak hour frequency in each of these scenarios?
So for the most part, like in this scenario 3, the 10 and the 30 would continue to run 20 minutes throughout the day.
Mhm.
The side routes would drop to 60 minutes, which is what they do already today.
Okay, even the routes that we are restoring, that we don't currently have today.
So those would actually not run at all with them, because still have some resource constraints.
Cyrus cannot use more than 49 buses. And we did peel off all of our school focused service, so that is in a different bucket. But yes, he's been very diligent in responding to our bus count.
But some of those areas where we're not running, like some of the purple routes, some of those are also covered by school trippers, correct?
The 18 in Livermore, no. The 18 used to be a school tripper, but that, I think that was eliminated before I started here in 2014. I'm looking at Jennifer, so she lives down there. The 4, which used to be the 3, in which that part of the 3 was eliminated in 2016. We do have some school trippers, all the 503, and then some of the 500, 501, 502, 504.
503 goes where the 4 is in?
Not exactly where the 4 is, but covers, I think I'm just thinking of some of the area west of the 680, in west, the true west of it.
Yeah, maybe that tiny little piece down the bottom, but not the bulk of the 4.
No, but the, definitely some of the 500, not the 503,
And the
do
2,
go up.
the 2 there,
Yeah.
that part 2 definitely is covered by the 50.
One, yes, I go everything.
Got it.
Are we making any stops by Goodness Village? That was something that we had wanted to do. Okay. I'm just
We have
looking at
ridership there, on the 14th.
So the 580X them up?
The 14th.
Oh, the 14 as it scoops up by the outlets. I see. Okay.
The 580X realignment would bring service back to this business park.
And to note about the 18 in scenario 3 here, that will bring back service to Mendenhall Middle School and Aurora High School. And we would at least consider the bell times at those schools for that.
Okay. All right. Are you looking for direction to bring this to the board?
Well, there's actually 2 more
Couple more
slides.
slides.
I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, no problem. All right.
That's a good, there you go.
So just real quick summary, the preferred service option coming out of the survey was scenario 3. Respondents like the alignment with the new BART schedule. They like the preservation of existing routes, and they like the expanded coverage. And that was followed in ranking by scenarios 1 and 2 respectively. And this slide really summarizes the ranking and the main reasons that the respondents stated for their choice. So perhaps we can leave that up for a moment. And then I will hand this back over to Mike to talk about next steps and then receive any additional input from you about these results.
Okay, one more slide. Okay, so what are next steps for Wheels in Motion? So, receive committee feedback, which we've already got quite a bit of, and based on your feedback, go back to the drawing table if necessary and fine tune the preferred alternative, which in this case is scenario 3. We will be going to the board at the November 6th meeting and requesting that the board set a public hearing for December 4th, because this is considered a major service change under our Title VI policy. So once the board approves the public hearing, that actually triggers the 30-day public comment period. So during this 30-day period, it won't be an outreach campaign of the magnitude we saw over the past couple of months. This is really just to receive any additional public comments. And so we will be posting public hearing notices which will all be translated into the appropriate Title VI languages for our policy. And so we'll be receiving or issuing a notification about the recommended changes in the public hearing. Will be placed on board buses as well as advertised in print media and digital channels. We will also present to our TAC meeting or board which is, I believe, the same week on November.
It's actually November 1st.
Oh, it's November 1st, okay, so pretty soon here. So then once we have our public hearing on December 4th, we'll come back in January to have the board formally approve the preferred alternative. And then we will look at implementing this scenario 3 probably in late February, early March in that time. So those are next steps. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Question?
I got some comments. So I think that's good. I will say you need to make sure to reach out to Andy Kelly. If you haven't talked to him recently over at BART.
Okay, at BART.
Yeah, I had a conversation with him recently that BART is hoping to increase frequency, and it is part of their long range plan. So we might be doing this again sooner than we want to. He would know a lot more than I do. This was a casual conversation, but I think it's important. I would recommend scenario 3. I wouldn't recommend any changes. I share a lot of your concerns about frequency, but I think what scenario 3 gives us that the other scenarios don't is the ability to actually adapt to changes as we go forward. You know, we will have the opportunity to see what happens with like Route 2. If we get 3 riders a day, you know, we need to give it time to mature. And I don't know, I leave that to you guys, how long time to mature is for a line. I can't imagine day 1, you're gonna get, you know, 200 riders on the first day. But scenario 3 is the only one that kind of gives us the ability to adapt to anything. And if we're finding that, say, you know, I'm picking on 2 because it's just one of the numbers I remember being a line we didn't have. So, you know, if 2, we bring it back, we're getting 3 riders a day, we now can cut that, and that frees up capacity maybe to change one of the 60-minute routes to a 40-minute route, or maybe if several routes are looking at, maybe we do over time shift to scenario 2, because one thing is, I think surveys, a lot of the times people want things that aren't necessarily what they use. You know, we all work in government and have seen this before, where people are very adamant about what they want and then usage doesn't line up with that. So I'd be really comfortable recommending 3 with no changes, and a pretty hefty monitoring program around it. I do think we're gonna see some places where 3 fails in the next year, you know. But I think overall, we might see some places, you know, who knows? Maybe 2 is a super popular route and we need to up it to a 40-minute route or even more frequent. I don't know, we'll find out that, but we only find that on scenario 3.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I think scenario 3 is clearly the obvious choice, but are we going to advertise the new routes very, very heavily?
Oh, yes. Apps, I'm David Marks, sitting behind me, new director of customer experience. We're gonna have splashy marketing, partnering with the cities and, you know, and businesses. I think it really will be a very exciting time to unveil a new network. So yes.
Good. And then we have heard some comments from, not only in the survey, but also certainly out and about that people are missing their BART connection because we're arriving at the same time as the BART station, so, as the BART train. So when we realign, making sure that we are scheduling to arrive 5 to 6 minutes before the BART train is scheduled to depart, so people get a chance to do whatever it is they need to do. Slowly climb the stairs, whatever it is, it takes them a while to make sure that when we align with the BART, we really do align with the BART in such a way that people can get on that train and not wait 20 minutes for the next one.
Okay, supervisor, any feedback?
I like Route 3. So version 3, not Route 3, scenario 3.
We like Route 3 also.
Route 3 is good.
I wish I could ride Route 3. We should do that. Let's take a field trip.
You can.
It's in Pleasanton.
You can drive it, David.
I am physically able to drive it, yes, and trained.
Okay, so my closing feedback is Route 3 obviously is Route 3 got me going. Scenario 3 is obviously the more popular route, which is terrific. But I know when we talked about route changes before, the entire board said, what's our ridership? So I would really like to request, there's some data in here, average rider, something to justify, not that somebody stopped by a farmer's market booth and said, oh, I like this route. And as you said, they say they like it and then they never use it. Like me saying I like the route and not riding it, but making sure these are tied to productive routes that justify us putting a full-size bus, because we tried cutaways at one time, the half buses, a full-size bus on these routes on a regular basis. And if you want, it sounds like you want the same route on Monday through Friday as you have Saturday, Sunday. That's the way it goes. So it would be interesting to see if there's a dramatic difference, like you're busy Monday through Friday, but nobody rides it on the weekend. I don't know, you guys are transit people, so is it common to have a different route on weekends or?
It's better to be consistent.
Be consistent.
But
Makes
typically
sense.
you see less service on the weekends.
Okay.
But if you'll recall, weekend ridership in COVID didn't take as much of a hit as weekday ridership. I think that speaks to who takes the bus on the weekends. It's not your commuter, it's folks you who are dependent on it. And so I do, and we can absolutely, when we come to the board in November, we can include an attachment with all the current riders per route.
Don't get me down to the too much detail, but I just want to make sure they're productive and that we see an average of 15 riders per hour. I don't know what your number is, but something that shows like this going to the Ace train station is a productive route because it's a long route out that way and all the way back. And I want to make sure that I've got 50 people on that route. So I think the rest of the board is going to feel similar. So give us a little bit of data just to support the route changes. Okay. All right. Okay. Looks like that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Cyrus. Agenda item 6 is a shared autonomous vehicle.
I'm going to kick off this update and then Nate is going to join me to walk through some of the slides. Would you pull up the slide deck, please? And you'll have to forgive me. I did not prepare as much as I would have liked to for this PowerPoint. I was in San Francisco a little longer than I thought today. So I will do my best. Okay, great. So this is an update on your shared autonomous vehicle deployment. Next slide, please. And today's update will consist of a brief project overview, including the scope of the SAV Phase 2 project and the grant funding that we have received in support of the deployment. And then Nate is going to speak with you about reassessing the use case for the SAV, including presenting the results of a survey that we conducted, as well as presenting to you the results of our request for information that we issued about a month and a half ago. And then I will bring it back to speak to next steps and potential project options, and then we can have a discussion. This is not an action item. You may recall we came to this committee in February earlier this year to brief you on the project and the grant funding and receiving committee direction at that meeting. We've been looking at funding options and then really reassessing the use case. So next slide, please. So the SAV Phase 2 project scope is to deploy a first and last mile autonomous vehicle at the East Dublin BART Pleasanton Station, East Dublin Pleasanton BART Station, connecting to a major employer in the city of Dublin. The concept has the SAV operating along a fixed route, synced with the BART schedule. So this is not an on-demand SAV. This would act like a bus. This SAV or the project scope would have the SAV operating in mixed traffic in the same lanes as regular vehicles at similar speeds, and would utilize connected vehicle technology to integrate the SAV with the City of Dublin's traffic signals, as well as would coordinate mobility hubs and curb space management efforts near the BART station. Next slide, please. Well, there's a lot of words on this slide, but we've been good at getting our grants. And we received, I think actually the city of Dublin received an IDEA grant in 2018 for just under $400,000 to basically support the systems engineering and the concept of operations and to support the eventual procurement of SAVs. The second grant, it was received in 2021. This was an RM2 grant from MTC, co-sponsored by Alameda CTC. And this grant is significant in nature. It is, I believe, $2.7 million in total, of which only $150,000 has been allocated currently. And that is to design the mobility hub at the SAV route terminus location at sites. The remaining $2.5 million is allocated for construction of the mobility hub, as well as to purchase 3 SAVs. And I want to just stop here for a second to talk to you a bit more about the RM2 money, and I'll invite Jennifer to correct me on anything that I say that is incorrect. Before the remaining RM2 funding can be released, we need to have an operating funding plan to support the operations of the SAVs for the useful life of the SAV. And that's the big challenge that we're facing with these pots of money, with the scope of this project. It is not flexible to be used for operating. And we've met with MTC and talked to them about that. They are adamant that we find operating funding, have that secured for the life of an SAV, which I'm told is around 6 years. No one can, no one has been, people are still figuring that out. But that has been the biggest challenge. And so in February, when we presented to this committee, we said, we're going to look and see if we can identify some operating funding to support the deployment of this. And in doing so, that is what led us to a survey and to better understand what is the demand. Because if we're going to knock on Zeiss's door and say, would you supplement the cost of this service, they want to see that their employees actually will use it. Anything did I forget to say anything, Jennifer, that you think would be important?
You're right on.
Okay, all right, thank you. Next
So it
slide.
all has to be used in the city of Dublin.
For the current scope, yes, for the current scope of the SA, yeah, it is all designed around this one route that goes from the East Dublin Pleasanton BART to the business.
I'm so puzzled, you need 3 SAVs just to service sites.
The original, project scope, and this was tied off of a BART running every 15 minutes, had 2 vehicles in operation and 1 spare.
Okay.
So reassessing the use case, as noted, operational funding is necessary, and we wanted to build a case for employer support. So go ahead, Nate, I'm now speaking to your slide.
Yeah, so as Chris alluded to, we wanted to have the local business support before we did anything. And in order to get that, we want to prove to them through the survey our results. So you can see we did a survey for the business park in June and July of 2023, sent to Ross and Zeiss employees. We had 188 employees complete the survey responses. And following that, we did a residential survey of Dublin Crossings in August of 2023 and had 119 complete survey responses that were received. Next slide, please. So we see from this slide, we did first ask what county you're from for their employees. We'll start with them. And Alameda County was the highest, about 105 riders for coming from Alameda County. Next slide, please.
And that was surprising to me, if I just can jump in. I assumed a lot of people commuted from the Central Valley. And I was even wondering, could people use the SAV if they didn't live near a BART station? And I was pleasantly surprised to see the number of people who are living and working in the county.
So next we asked the employees, how many days per week do you typically commute to work? And we got the most at 2, around 35%, and then 3 at 25%, and the other 2 were both below, or all below 20%.
Someone has 6 days.
That's 6 days. Next slide, please. The next question that we asked was, what days of the week do you typically commute to work? And we see there's a big, strong presence for Tuesday and Wednesday. So Tuesday was 85%, and that's about the same when Wednesday was. And the drop off on Thursday was around 50% for commuting in. So Fridays and Mondays, most people tended to work from
home. Next slide, please. Then our next survey was to ask, how did you commute to work on a typical day within the last week? And we found that most people tend to drive alone, around 75% people surveyed drove alone, and about 10% said they took the bar. And that's from the Zeiss and Ross employees. Next slide, please. So then the final question for the employees that had a lot of relevance was, would you consider using the BART more often if there was an SAV route that connected those two areas together? And it was a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the least likely and 5 being yes, the most important to it. Around 40% of 5 said that they would consider taking an SAV from the BART to the business park. And those are the relevant employee survey results that we got, and move on to the residential ones. Again, we see there's a big jump here. That's surprising was that a lot of the commuters in the Dublin crossing area go to San Francisco. It's about 36, 37 people of the 119 surveys said that. And for Alameda, it's around 45, Alameda County. Next slide, please. The residential survey, we asked, how did you commute to work on a typical day? And again, the majority drive alone, around 60%. And then this is where we saw a spike, about 20% take the BART. So a lot more residential customers with BART than employee. Next slide, please. Then next we asked if there was an SAV that connected the BART and the local businesses, what would you use? So this question, it shows a very high percentage, about 45% for the BART. But the responses that we got for this question were not to the route that we had already designated. Most of them had other ideas that they would like to go to, so.
I want to go to Dublin.
They wanted to come in Dublin crossing.
Dublin High School, yeah.
So there's many, a plethora of suggestions that they had given us, nothing very
That's
consistent. It was a lot of different areas. So when we saw this, we kind of knew what the residents were going with it. So we moved on to the next slide.
Does it also, only 20 people answered this question
119,
and then skip 97?
97 skipped.
So 20 people answered it?
No.
No,
It's,
there,
in total, there was a survey of over 200,
Okay.
but a lot of people with things, we were doing a raffle for this. So if you took the survey, you had a chance to get a $50 gift card. Well, a lot of people had skipped the questions to be eligible for the gift card, but we didn't do that. If you completed the survey, you're eligible for the gift card. Next slide. So as we were saying, the request for information, we completed it, so we wanted to better understand what we were doing, what the marketplace looked like. So our requirements for the scope of work was at the area it's going in, 35 miles per hour is the speed limit. So we want to be, the lowest you can go is 25 miles per hour. So that was one of our requirements. We needed to be able to be all electric, that was another requirements. And to communicate wirelessly with the traffic signals or TSP. So that way we ensure the safety of our riders and of the vehicle itself as well. And the results are this: we sent out the survey to 20 different vendors and we received one response. The one response that we got from the vendor was a service for a non-electric vehicle, and it was capable of reaching the speeds that we needed, but everything else it cannot meet. Next slide, please. And I'll turn it over to proceed with the next steps.
and before I talk about potential path forward, I think what we learned from the survey, putting survey data accuracy aside, was that there was some excitement about this. People did say, okay, I would use it. So then we said, what's out there in the marketplace? What technology exists? You hear the nightmarish stories coming out of San Francisco with the cruise robo-taxis. I saw 2 of them yesterday. It's a little trip to see that. You've got companies that have just gone away, that are no longer in the space. And so we really wanted to know, is there a technology vendor that is available in the US that can meet our requirements? And as Nate mentioned, we had one response that was deemed non-responsive to our needs. So we've identified 2 potential paths forward, and this is what we want to bring to you today to get your feedback on. We could continue to work on the SAV phase 2 and wait to expend the remaining ARM2 money until the time in which a commercially available SAV that meets our requirements is available. This would also require us to fully fund an operating plan to satisfy RM2 requirements. Another option is to explore alternatives with MTC and stakeholders, including the City of Dublin staff. We've been working with your staff very closely on this. And look to reprogram the remaining $2.5 million in RM2 funding to a different eligible capital project and close out existing grants. I will also just mention AB 96 was signed by Governor Newsom a few weeks ago. I don't have the legislation in front of me, but it does require any public transit agency who is interested in deploying autonomous technology to negotiate with their labor union 10 months before the start of a procurement. It's basically to protect jobs. And so that did not exist. That legislation did not exist when we scoped out this project. So I just wanted to bring that up. It hasn't been tested. It's not even in effect yet until January 1. I think, is there another slide? No, that is it. So thank you very much. We can take your questions.
Do you want to go back one slide? Or- So we have the options up there.
One more.
Was Zeiss, did we approach them at all about talking about operating? And would they?
My recollection of the conversation with Zeiss leadership was they were open to it if there was demand from their employees, but they recognize that the vast majority of their employees are not there 5 days a week. And I think that's also important. The cost of operating this, if we're only running it 2 days a week, just may not be, there may not even be any efficiencies.
And we only talked to Zeiss employees, we didn't survey Ross.
We did survey Ross,
We did survey
absolutely,
Ross.
yeah,
Okay.
we sure did.
So
Both of those.
that was Zeiss and Ross
Yes.
and all these others, okay.
Correct.
You know, I think the pandemic sort of put the nail in the technology companies as well as the ridership. I think some of the excitement is that, you know, our little toaster there ran for quite a while ago. And so people remember it and we're excited about how it was gonna come down. And to the discussion earlier, I think that people answer surveys aspirationally. You know, yes, I'd ride that. Well, I'd ride it if, you know what I mean? So you know, while I would love to still see us pursue this project, I'm just not sure it's feasible at this point.
I pretty much agree. I think, you know, as I've said, every time this has come up, I feel like we're 5 years away for the last 25 years. You know, maybe we're 4 years away now. I think, I just don't see it as a good use of our focus and money right now. And I would love to be the leader on this and the, you know, forefront of it, but it's just not there.
We're ahead of time.
Yeah, I think we will get there someday. But right now, I'd rather we focus on other things.
Yeah, we're a small little, right, agency compared to the big guys.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, hiring someone with an electric vehicle is gonna cost less and be easier to implement, you know, this is a lot of investment for ultimately testing a technology. It's what we're really doing. We're not serving our clients better by doing this. We're just testing the technology, so.
Supervisor, feedback?
Yeah, so question that I have and when you talk to MTC about alternatives, maybe I don't know what expectation they have for learning through us. You know, somebody has to be the guinea pig, so to speak. I note that they're in the vicinity of Zeiss and Ross is also Patelco and AI. By the way, AI is its own, they have their own LiDAR autonomous technology, and there are other businesses as well. And I'm just wondering if, while we're the implementer of this currently, should others be looking at, let MTC and other people in this space take this burden on them, not on us, we can be, tangentially involved, but do we have to be the ones carrying all the weight for this to happen? But I just do feel it is the future at some point. I don't know when we'll get there. But I don't want to take our eye off the ball of other things that we have to do. But if somebody would come in and see us as a great science lab to experiment in and get and do some of this heavy lifting for us, then maybe that's an option. I don't know. But there are experts in this space, and maybe they could not throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. But I agree, we do have a lot for us to continue in this. We need others to jump in. Would MTC be wanting to learn from this? I think Bart should be all over learning how to make this happen, because every BART route, every BART stop has a potential last mile solution that they need to find. So why aren't they all over this? Why isn't MTC all over this? Why isn't somebody else all over this? Because it's a great, where else can you find an opportunity to test this bleeding edge technology but right here? So anyway, that's how I think about it.
I really like that comment, because, we've done phase one, we've run the groundwork. The city of Dublin has done an awful lot of the groundwork and the realignment of some signage and the route, and work with the business community, and we stand ready to test this if we can find additional partners to partner with. But I think committing the funds from an agency this size at this point is.
Absolutely agree.
They should pay us to do this. What do you think?
They're trying to give you a couple $1 million to try to do it.
And there are 2 autonomous vehicle pilots running today, and they're both administered by county transportation agencies. It's CCTA running Presto up at Bishop Ranch, and then it's SFCTA running the Treasure Island SAV. So, and absolutely what we want to be very respectful of is that we learn from this, that we didn't do this for nothing. And so we will work very closely with our grantors to make sure that we identify the updated deliverables that could be useful. And we're already speaking to Simon Tish about this from the city of Dublin. And I will absolutely bring this message back to MTC and see if there's any interest in supporting this.
So Dave, when the county's ready to do it, we're ready to run with it.
But I do think it will come. I mean, it will be here, but
So just my comments, I was here when we first started doing the shared autonomous vehicle, and it was a fun ribbon cutting. And I think everybody expected the timeline to be much shorter. And it seems to have dragged on and on for many reasons. And in even statewide shared autonomous vehicle laws and legislature that's accommodating for these kinds of rides. And then lastly, 25 miles an hour is a problem. And it's a problem on Dublin Boulevard, which is a fast street, and it's a pokey little thing that people can walk almost as fast as. So I was very proud to be part of Wheels when, looks like we lost David. When we introduced this, we were on the calendar, remember the transit calendar. And it was a fun thing. We had the bandwidth to be able to support it, but it seems that it's just a little bit beyond our reach. And it's not that we aren't a great agency, but the transit cliff has come, ridership is hard to get, and it seems like frosting on the cake, and we need to focus on the cake. So I think we're all pretty much on the same page. There's some challenges, but I'll tell you, not to compete against Dublin, the people, once we redo Stonebridge Mall Road, and that is a transit village, and we've got already some large employers there. I've started talking to them about it, having a nice little small vehicle, or maybe it's there's an SAV, but just going around there and bringing them to BART, and it could be really, really fun. But
you could build that infrastructure in as that is being redeveloped.
Absolutely, 25 mile an hour is speed limit.
Yeah.
So it's a slow route. But when we started this, I would have thought we'd have riders in the buses by now. Last year and the year before, and it's just taking a long time.
And the vehicle we leased isn't even commercially available in the US anymore.
And insurance was crazy. I had to insure it for $1 million, so it's so much things, if I recall correctly. So you have some feedback, are you going to bring this to the board then?
I will be bringing this back to the committee for an action next November, or this November, next month, and then to the board.
Okay,
And we will, in the meantime, work with our funding partners to see what other eligible projects might be in line
all
for.
right, and preview of upcoming items.
All right, so as mentioned, I will be bringing the committee an action item related to the SAV project in November. And then we are working to give you an update on your zero emissions bus implementation plan, not only rolling stock and when we will start to see our zero emissions buses, but also the state of our Atlantis facility and the funding that we are putting together. In December, I think we don't hold you hostage over the holidays. I think we cancel this committee. And then at your January meeting, we will be bringing you some recommendations for the Go Tri-Valley program with Uber and Lyft. You may recall ridership went through the roof. I've had, since then, had conversations with our project leads from both agencies or both companies, and both are very willing to modify the program however we see fit. So staff will be doing some data mining and
we're
bringing you
getting
some
good
options.
data for that?
Pardon?
If we're getting good data for that?
Yes, it's different data from each of them, but yes, it's come a long way. It has come a long way since I last played with the data years ago.
Okay, matters initiated by committee members. I'm gonna actually do a report out. So I was in a subcommittee at Alameda CTC and we approved 5.9 million. I'm gonna go to the board this coming week. And we should get our approval for that. It was unanimous at the subcommittee. So that'll be for the inquiries. So, and you know, we grabbed some money. There, we had about 2.5 and then somebody else could take it, Fremont could take it. So the tech committee sort of blended them together and everybody goes, all the money was gonna go to Aquarius. So I said, sounds good to me. Yeah, so we got unanimous support on that. So now it'll go to the board and hopefully you'll get notification from the CTC shortly. So always fighting for money for you guys. Okay, next meeting date is November 27th. And meeting's adjourned.